Welcome back, everybody. On this episode of 1965 Impala, we have our rear end back in powder coating. Being that we're waiting on parts for the front end, we are going to do the rear end. So we are going to put the rear end together. We're going to put it in the car, all the brand new QA1 suspension. This thing's going to be trick. Let's get this stool out of the way. I got time to sit down. Nonsense talking. So we got our parts over here. So I'm going to start with putting the axle bearings in it. We're going to knock those in there. We got some axle bearings and seals. This is an Impala rear end, obviously, out of a 65 Impala, go figure.
Really?
Really. Impala is the same as a C10 truck. They have bigger axle bearings, so keep that in mind. So we got our axle bearings here. We even went with upgraded 1350 pinion yoke. So we got our little installer here. Got to find one that's just a hair smaller than the bearing. Go ahead and put our axle bearing in. Gotta be working on the railroad. Oh yeah. So we have our gears. Oh. And in the gears, you have your ring gear and you have your pinion gear. So then you have your pinion bearings. So this is the one that goes down here, and this is the one that'll go up here. And what holds them tight is you have your crush sleeve. Goes in between them. Got it? Okay. So we're gonna put our races in for our bearings. And we already blew the housing out and everything. Just make sure there's no burrs. This inner one here, it's a little tricky if you have your standard little shorty arm here, because you don't have very much depth. You gotta make sure that you hit it straight. Just gotta keep an eye on it. As you go in, ain't nothing a good hammer won't handle. Then you're gonna get a little bit of aluminum from your, well, I do, from my tool. My tool's aluminum. So we're just gonna blow out the little bit of shavings here. So now we're gonna put the outer race in it and make sure it goes in straight. Keep an eye on it. There it is. All right, this is where I break the law. So we're gonna take our pinion bearing. We're gonna set it in here, okay? Then we're gonna get our pinion seal. See, we got a spring seal. So I'm just gonna use some wheel bearing grease, and I'm gonna pack it here on the back side of this seal, about 3 or 4 spots. So when I hammer this in there, my little spring doesn't have any chance, or less likely of a chance, of doing it off of here, and then you're gonna lose your seal. I'm gonna do a little squirt of brake cleaner. I'm gonna give this outside a quick wipe. I'm gonna give the inside here a quick wipe. Make sure it's all dry and clean. Then I'm gonna put a little film of silicone around the outside here to take up any imperfections of over the years. Somebody changing that seal and scraping it or beating on it wrong or doing something weird. So we're gonna put this guy in here now. And I'm just gonna work it around. I'm gonna hold it and get this guy started here. If it's too much of a pain in the butt, which it might be, it's looking like it's gonna be a pain in the butt. Oh, see? It was getting scared. Just work it around in a circle. And then you got your silicone splooging out. So you gotta wipe that up. You don't wanna have a mess. So you gotta make it look like you know what you're doing.
But you don't know what you're doing.
I know, but you wanna pretend that you know what you're doing. Get that cleaned up a little bit. Finish putting your seal in. I like it.
So let me ask you, sir.
Oh, geez.
Why are people so afraid of rebuilding rear ends?
I have no idea. It does take a couple extra, I guess you could say, specialty tools. So now that we got a mess going on here with our styrofoam, so we gotta blow all the nonsense off of our pinion gear. So we'll do it this direction, away from our rear end. So we have our pinion gear, we have our pinion bearing. So this guy needs to be pressed on here, but you don't want to press it on without putting a shim in here. So no shim on here, so it goes in this way. So this is gonna be deeper in the rear end. So it's gonna change where your ring gear winds up being. And if you have it too far over, then one axle is gonna be shoved in and one's gonna be poking out a little bit. So you wanna have this centered in your housing, is pretty much. A good rule of thumb is if you have your original one, you could take off your bearing and take the original bearing, shim and use it, but we don't have that luxury. So we have shims here for our pinion bearing. They come in the kit. So we wanna pick a shim around 25, 30 thousandths is a good seems to be the size of the original ones. So this is where your little math comes in. You gotta have a caliper. We got our little caliper here. So we're gonna zero it out, make sure it's clean. Then we're on inches. So we're gonna find the shim here. That one's 20. I think I want a little bit thicker than that. Ooh, a 30, I like that one. I think we're gonna go with 30. See if we can find a 25. So I'm with a 28 thousandths. 28 thousandths, right? I'm with 28,000 shim. So if my calculations are wrong, I'm gonna have to take this bearing, or the pinion back out, get this bearing off and put a thicker or thinner shim on here.
You sound like Doc Brown. My calculations are correct.
So now we're gonna put our bearing on. You wanna press it on there. You can do it a couple different ways. You can use a press, or you can use a swinging press.
Wow!
We're gonna use a swinging press. Put it on the hardened race part.
With your exhaust pipe?
This is an exhaust pipe. So now we have our bearing all the way installed. Make sure we don't have any debris. Then we get our crush sleeve that you can only put on one way, so you won't go that way. Small side goes to the little bearing, big side goes to the big bearing. The kit comes with a nut and a washer. But the washer, a lot of times, is not hardened as much as the factory one. So I kept the factory washer. See, it's thicker. See, this is factory. A little thicker. I like the factory guy, so I kept the factory one. But we're gonna use a new nut, okay? New nut, get the old washer. Okay. We got our new pinion yoke. This is a 1350 U-joint. We didn't want to have, because the transmission is a bigger U-joint, so we don't want to have the little one on the rear end and the bigger one on the tranny. So we wanted the same size U-joint, both sides of the driveline. We're gonna blow it out. So we're gonna take our bearing, washer, pinion, the whole enchilada over here to the rear end. A couple things we have to do before we put the pinion up in there. For one, we don't need to lube the outside of the pinion yoke where it rides on the seal because we already lubed the seal. But you want to put some sealant on the splines where it goes on to the pinion. So this will slide on here, and you could leak through here around the nut and washer. You could use some silicone. I like to use some anaerobic, and I'm going to put some around the threads here before I put it up in there. So we'll just go around here, start at the bottom, and it'll shove its way up as you put it on. And you want to make sure it's shoved down into the splines. Go around with your finger, about like so. See that? You with me? Good stuff, right? This bearing is pretty much pressed on to this part of the pinion. Tight fit. So we're going to come up here from the bottom. Once you get it started here, you got to be careful not to push too much up on the seal. So now we're going to get our pinion on here. You got to spin it, make sure it lines up with the seal. And you got to push up on it, tap this down. Enough of a point where you can start your nut. You can start it without the washer, suck it together a little bit. So as you can see, as I was tightening it, I would stop and feel. You're gonna crush the sleeve down and take that slop out of there, and that's where you're getting your preload. So you wanna feel it and keep going. You can kind of get it close by hand, pull up on it, and then get all the slop out of there. And then you get to the point where you start to get a little bit of a load on your rotation. So it's a rotational load is your preload on the bearings once you get the two together. So this is one of the kind of a specialty tool you would need to do rear ends. It's a mechanical torque wrench. So it's not a clicker style, it's quarter inch, so I gotta bring it up so I can use the same 1/2 inch socket that I was using. So then you come on here and you wanna check your rotational so it doesn't click. Like I said, it's mechanical. So it tells you your preload on it. So we're a little light. So we're roughly about 8 pounds of rotational preload. So on a used bearing, it's 15 inch-pounds rotational, and on new bearings, it's 25. So I didn't lube, you see I didn't lube any of the bearings, put them on dry. It could change the rotational inch-pounds if you put lube on your bearings. So that's why I put them on dry. So when we flip it over and put gear oil in it, and then spin it by hand a couple times, it'll get lubed just fine. So we're a little light, we're about 7 inch-pounds. We need to get it up to 25, so we're gonna go a little bit more. So what I do is I just, have it on the impact and I just watch the lettering or something on the socket, and then I try to hold the pinion in place, the yoke, and then I'll, bump it a couple times and watch the socket lettering move a little bit, and then I'll recheck it. And that crush sleeve, that's holding back a lot of power, so it's gonna take some doing to collapse it down. See what we're up to now. We made it a hair over. We're 20, well, right about. So you can't loosen it up. So once it's there, it's there. The crush sleeve will lose it doesn't spring back. So we're maybe a couple inch-pounds, depending on where it's at. High, right at 25. I think it's dead on. I'm gonna call it good. So now we have our pinion in it, all tight, seal. We're all done here. So we're gonna flip it over. And now we need to get our carrier set up. All right, so we got our little clean zone here. We have an Eden posi.
You're eating the posi?
No, not eating the posi. This is just a spring style posi, one that they had for forever now. So this is another instance on rear ends that you, in my opinion, you need to have another somewhat specialty tool, is you need to have a torch or some sort of way to heat the ring gear up. So you clean this off here where the ring gear sits, then you got your ring gear. You blow all this popcorn or whatever out of the ring gear. Okay, so your ring gear goes on here like so. But you see it doesn't sit all the way down, right? Because it has this machined lip right here, and this is machined. So it's a very tight tolerance. So what you could do is you could put it on here, and you could put the bolts in your ring gear, and you could suck it down, going side to side. But the risk is that you can get a metal shaving here, come off, and get underneath the ring gear, and it actually causes the ring gear to wobble and wear your gears pretty much. So what you want to do, or what I do is, I set this on here, and then I get a torch, I heat up the ring gear, and then this will fall on there into place. And then while it's still warm, you move it to line up the bolts and put the bolts in it. This kit comes with new ring gear bolts that are just a standard grade 8 bolt and a grade 8 lock washer. I'm not a big fan of this. I think it's not quite enough strength for the ring gear. So what I like to do is I get a set of the ARP that seem to torque a lot better, and they just feel a lot better. These ones here, when you torque them, they just don't seem like they're gonna make it. So we're gonna use ARPs. So we're gonna get these set up, get them prepped. So when we get this thing all lined up and on there, we can put the bolts in it. So we're just gonna go around in circles here. We're gonna heat this bad boy up, and it'll get to the point that it'll just go clinkety clink, and it'll fall right down into place. Go a little backwards for a minute, go forwards for a minute, get all crazy with it. See, just like so. We're gonna shut this off. We have to be careful now. We already got Loctite on our bolts. Put it in the bottom here. And if I was really smart, I'd have a rag next to me already. Oh, hold on. Then we want to rotate it to line it up with our bolt hole. And then doing it this way, make sure you don't, no risk of any burrs. Have the ring gear sit nice and flat. If you don't have a set of torches, you always throw them in your oven. Cook it up a little bit.
So what do you usually put the pre-bake at?
You want to put it at 450. Get it nice and ready. Cook it for a good 20 minutes. Get it nice and hot. Does anybody want to guess on how many ring gear bolts are in my 12 bolt? Anybody? Anybody?
3. Take it or leave it.
You want to get all these snug down, all of them in, and all of them snug down before you flip it. All snug. Now we can flip it. ARP wants 55 foot-pounds. Let's count them together now, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We'll do a little crissy-cross for good measure. So now we have all of our ring gear bolts torqued. We need to put on our carrier bearings. So we have 2 of them. So same deal. You can press them on, or you can use a good old swinging press. Flip it over.
Same but exactly different?
Same, yep. Look at that, huh? Good to go. Nice and straight. Everybody's happy. So you gotta be careful not to pinch the fingers without pinching the fingers. Okay? Okay. So now we have to determine the backlash. So you can see the shims go on the side of the bearings here. So if this was all the way over to this side, we'd have way too much backlash. And if it's all the way over the other way too tight. So we gotta find the happy medium. So this is one of the factory, I like to use the factory ones. So I kept one of the originals The other side got a little beat up. This one here looks like it got a little chip maybe. But you just gotta start from scratch. So a shim will go here. So we can start with one on this side. You wanna get it in there straight. These are the shims that come in the kit. It comes with a whole bunch of carrier shims. So this has the option, so it has a little step on here. So if you have the space, you could do a thicker one, and then you hold smaller shims on it and it kind of catches it. But we don't have that much area we need to fill. So we can't use this style because we don't have enough room. So we're gonna put those aside. So see if we had it right here with this shim, this thickness in here, had one over here, see it's too tight. So we need to take this one out, maybe move it over here because it's too thick over here and it's pushing the ring gear too far over. Well, with a few shims and a little bit of measuring, I think we got a spot on. So the spec is between 5 to 9, and we're right at 6. This is all gonna be different. This is not a reference at all, but this side is like 63 thousandths total thickness of shim, and then this side over here is like 85 or something, 89, somewhere in there. But I mean, it's gonna be different every single rear end. So I wouldn't use that as a reference at all. And let's get our compound on the gear. This is the compound that comes in the installation kit. I just make a mess. I get it all over there. So I just take a couple of these teeth. We just go like this. We just paste it in there. Want to know what it is going forward? So I hold the ring gear to pull tension on it so it doesn't flop back and forth. And I act like I'm driving down the road. We're just gonna drive it around. So you can see on this that it's almost all the way in the back of the ring gear, full mesh, and it's going side to side, the whole length of the gear, the whole teeth, and it's even amount on the edge. So I'd say that carrier is centered, and my pinion depth is spot on. I think it's good. I think it's amazing. So now I'm gonna spin this around right here. We're gonna take our pin out, the bolt for our pin, and we're gonna put the axles in this thing. We got the axle wiped off here. We're gonna put it in. We gotta be really careful not to beat up the seal as much as possible. And we're just running obviously the stock axles in this thing. And then we just need to push it in enough to get the C-clip in there. Slide our C-clip in, pop the axle back out. That one's that one. If you have a little look here, you can see the axle, the shiny part here, how it's even on both sides. The axles are in there evenly, which means the carrier is centered in the rear end, which means everything lined up, just like it's supposed to. You gotta make sure the pin doesn't go all the way through. It tries to make a run for it. That's it right there, man. You don't want that little bolt to come out. Ruin your day. We're gonna hold the pinion. We're gonna torque it down. About 18 foot-pounds, see? It's like 18 foot-pounds, just like that.
Easy. Now you try.
So normally when you have this rear end in the car, it's sitting about like this level, or this angle I should say, and you fill it through right here. But obviously right now with the cover off of it, it's really easy to fill it right here in the back. So we have 3 of these. Right now we're gonna put 2 of them in there. So this already has the friction modifier for the clutches. So we're just gonna dump 2 of these in there for right now. And then after it's in the car, we're going to double check the fluid level at the side. We're just gonna lube it all up. Get some on the bearings. Oh yeah, isn't it just satisfying?
It's like putting syrup on pancakes.
Oh man, that thing feels really nice with fluid in it. Dumped it onto the carrier bearings. Pinion bearings nice and lubed now. Man, that feels good. So this is one of the problems here. I told the powder coaters to split the bolts when they did this, and they kind of got a little much. So you can see the gasket, which in turn the cover, is not gonna catch it all. So I didn't paint the cover yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean the cover up. I'm gonna put it on here. Then I'm gonna mask around here. And we're gonna rattle can the cover. All right, so it's the next day. We got the cover put on it. I wish I would've got a cover. This guy's a little weathered, but we caught ourselves though. Before we put the cover on it, we found that we had to put the caliper mounts there, a little backing plate, parking brake shoes in it. So we had to pop the axles back out and put those on both sides before the cover. So that worked out. We got the cover on it here. It's all torqued down. We got the bracket. This is powder coated. The bracket for the brake line. So we're gonna finish up the rotors here. And Blake, man, he got these ginormous brakes. One thing he told me, he says, if all else fails, I don't want to hit a minivan in the traffic light. That's what he tells me. So he's got these, I think these things are, let's see, how big are these? What do we got? So they're just shy of 13-inch rotors. But if the slow Nova driver is measuring these, it'd probably be like 8 inches. I don't know how he measures stuff. But our tape measure is just shy of 13. The rears are 4-piston calipers. That's still some really good stopping power.
You gotta show me where it says it.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if it doesn't say it.
Yeah, it's right there. There you go.
Okay.
Right in this area.
Thank you.
Right here is where it says it. We're gonna get these things bolted together. These are separate. The rotor goes to the hat. So we're gonna bolt it down. We're gonna Loctite it. We're gonna safety wire it. We're gonna torque it. Not necessarily in that order.
What do these pliers have to do with anything?
That helps me put the wire through this little itty bitty teeny little hole in the head. You see it? This little itty bitty wire goes through this little itty bitty hole. There it is. And then you kind of grab it with the pliers and you gotta pull it through. I'll show you. We'll get you set up over here. We're gonna get started. So there you have it. That's how I safety wire it. And it's more work than it looks like it is. So the whole point behind the safety wiring is so these bolts won't back out. So they may loosen up a little bit, but they're not gonna fall out because they're not able to unscrew.
How many people actually safety wire?
I don't know, probably not that many because you gotta have a special tool and it's very tedious. But just another level of precaution is all it is. We got a bajillion different bolt patterns, so we gotta figure out which one we like. We got a winner. I like to use a couple lug nuts to hold the rotor in place. Now it's on there snug. Now we can put our caliper bracket. We got a little spacer. And this all has shims in it, but we're gonna go up tight and then go from there. See if we need to bring it back. Put a little Loctite on here. Gonna snug these down. This one, I'm gonna put one shim. I'm gonna try one shim on this one. Have a feeling. Put a single shim there. Slide our caliper on here. Put our brake pad in here. Brake pad in here. Then we're gonna put a washer on here and a washer on here. We're gonna snug it down. Then we got our little pad hold down here. This guy here goes across. Hold your brake pads in place. And there you have it, just like that. That's how you build 12-bolt Chevy passenger car with your Willwood brakes. So I don't know if we mentioned it, but this one we went with a 342 gear. It's a 3 Series posi, and we mentioned the bigger pinion yoke, 1350 pinion yoke, stock axles, stock housing, stock cover. So we kind of teased you a little bit. We ran out of time here. We pretty much just got the rear end done. Next go around, which would be I guess next video, we're gonna work on the brackets, the QA1 brackets for the coilovers. We got to do a little drilling, couple things over here on both sides, and we're gonna get this guy in the car. The next go around. You got to come back. You know what you got to do. I don't even need to say it. You already know.